Teddy Talks With features Mario C. Bauer in conversation with the stars of the F&B industry. Join Mario and his guests as they explore what motivation, success, and most importantly, love for food mean. Because in life, only two things matter: love and food. Learn more on www.teddytalkswith.com.
Welcome to Teddy Talks. Today we are here in a secret garden. We'll tell you more about that later. I'm here together with Des, the chairman and CEO, but as he described himself, he's the man who turns on the light and turns off the light in the evening. Des from D&D, welcome at Teddy Talks. I think it's the most fanciest place we've been so far with this day.
Is it?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
The fanciest place you've been for these talks. Wow. We've got even fancier places.
We do like coffee shops and fast casual, so we want to learn about the fine dining. But before we talk about your success with D&D, we want to talk about you a little bit. We want to find out you growing up, but on how important food was in your family. Like when you remember back, family situation, what role did food play in your childhood?
My childhood,
in your teenager years, how important was it?
I mean, food was very important, but we weren't a foodie family. We weren't. There were no. We were a family of engineers and doctors and professionals. So we weren't chefs and hotel owners. Well, initially my mother cooked at home. One of my childhood memories, I grew up in my early days in Sri Lanka. And we used to, now Sri Lankan food has become in vogue. And it's a hot new food trend, I'm told, in London. From there being no Sri Lankan or good quality Sri Lankan restaurants in here for years. But actually, one of my great memories of food when I was that age, and that was, we came to England when I was 7, but when I was 4 and 5, was we used to go to the hotels and eat Chinese food.
Chinese food in Sri Lanka?
And Chinese food in Sri Lanka, which is a slightly more spicy version of more Szechuan than Peking. We just thought it was just the most wonderful. That was the real treat. So we had South Indian, Sri Lankan food at home.
So your memory is like a blend between Sri Lankan food and Chinese food from your childhood?
Mainly Sri Lankan food, obviously, but for a treat we used to have Chinese food.
So that's when then growing up was the calling for the restaurant industry, because normally, I mean, when you grow up, it's not normally the dream to say I become a restaurateur, or maybe it was, but when was this shift in your growing up when you say, okay, I'm gonna be
I had no intention of becoming a restaurateur.
Like all of us.
I fell into it.
So how? Tell us.
So the reason I fell into it, I'm an accountant. I trained as an accountant at one of the big firms, at Ernst & Young, and then I wasn't a conventional accountant. I was a financial strategist, and I worked for a billionaire. So I trained, got qualified, and I worked for this billionaire, a guy called Gerald Ronson, who's a big property owner. Then in the 80s, 1980s, and then I got very interested in Terence Conran and what he was doing in terms of design and buildings and interiors. So I joined him as his business partner.
But because of him,
I was more interested, I have to say, in design and buildings and property than I was in. I love eating out and always have done. I don't tire of it. I eat out 250 times a year. I still don't tire of it. But that was my passion in terms of what I want to do with my business life. It just happened because I wanted to be involved with a creative business in property and interiors and architecture and design. That's how I originally got to work with Terence Conran, whom I admired, who was very influential in retail and design, more than in restaurants in the 1970s and 1980s. So I joined him, and he got interested in going into restaurants, and it was really through him that I developed an interest in restaurants.
So you both had no clue back then? Can we summarize it that way?
Sometimes.
But he had the money, I guess.
He had the money.
That helps.
I had the
passion,
I had a bit
youth,
of a brain,
the drive,
the youth, the drive,
the heart.
No, I think sometimes in business the people who really change things are not necessarily people who've been involved in that business. the people who were, if you like, we were early disruptors. No, Terence was a designer, I was a finance guy. We did have a restaurateur, a guy called Joel Kiston, who was a restaurant manager who came from a high-end restaurant. But really, we sat there and said, okay, right, we want to create a new type of restaurant for London. It was, I say, new type of restaurant for London. It was we were going to bring our version of the great French brasseries.
That was like 1990, 1992?
That was in the early 90s.
Okay.
So that was it wasn't the first restaurant we opened, Quaglinos, but it was really the restaurant that had the most impact on the London restaurant scene and had the most impact on us as a business. So we opened this giant restaurant called Quaglinos, and I remember it quite clearly because we'd just come out of a recession, a pretty tough recession, and everybody, almost without exception, said that we were nuts to do what we did. The guy who was, I think the biggest restaurant in London at that time, or one of the biggest restaurants, was Langer's, which was around the corner. So Langer's had about 250 covers, and we opened Quaglinos. We had 468 covers.
Wow.
And the guy who was, the Langer's people said, you know what's going to happen? We can't even fill our 250 cover restaurant. You're opening with 468 covers. What's going to happen is you're going to take half our business. We're going to be, really struggling. We'll start losing money, and you take half our business. But that's not enough for you. That's only 120 covers. So you'll be empty, and so we'll both go bust. Well, we didn't happen that way. Thankfully, we created something different, which coming out of a very tough time. Just seemed to capture the mood of a recovery from recession and so on. And it was a phenomenal success. And,
so how did the neighbors do after you opened?
Oh, they did very well, actually. I think their business went up.
That would have been my guess. You made it hip there and you created
People just started to large restaurants. Well,
Great.
They're a great thin when they're busy. There's a great buzz about them. They're great fun. And I mean, it was a great fun restaurant at the Quaglinos, which I think was the restaurant which put Conrad restaurants.
But there was one. Oh, here we go. Hello. Thank you. I heard you're very specific about your cappuccino. There was even a newspaper article.
Finest oat milk.
Oat milk. I'm vegan, guys, at the moment, as you know, so test. Thank you so much. So what's the specific thing about your cappuccino?
I mean, firstly, I think with coffee and with so many things, you get used to how it should be made, and it's like a martini. If you drink a martini, you really do. You want the right gin or vodka, depending on which your preference is. You need the right vermouth, and you need the right mixture. Well, with my cappuccino, I send a lot of cappuccinos back. Not here, because they've really learned how to do it. You have to have.
But you got a cake, and I didn't get a cake. So that's the unfair thing, guys. That the boss gets a cake to his cappuccino, and we need to talk about that.
But on the froth, normally I get a heart.
Ah, okay.
But it's not a very good heart today. However, the important thing about a cappuccino, firstly, obviously, the coffee. So we've used the same coffee Mazzetti, which is an Italian coffee supplier that with the whole of the group has used for years. And so you get used to that coffee. And then it has to be a double shot. I think most people now in London do have double shot cappuccinos. But when you go to America, you have to say, I don't want that normal stuff that you have with single shot. Starbucks, can't drink that. So double shot, good coffee, and just the right amount of froth in terms of the milk.
So let's do the test. If not, we need to call him back.
If I send it back, they'll be extremely unhappy.
Is it this love for details, that's what you described now, the form of the cappuccino, etc., what makes or made it back then, what you called, it was the first, you call it Conrad, but it was like also your brainchild, obviously, the first new restaurant. Was it this love for details, the love to put attention on more just one thing, what made you successful back then? Or what was it back then, what made the difference? Was it just to be brave, or why it meant such a big impact back then?
I think the big impact is the big idea and we created an environment which was very theatrical. And when you went in there, when you went to the restaurant, it was just an incredible atmosphere. And how it was created, look, I think, of course, we obsess about the details, because we're a very design-led restaurant company, and we obsess about the details of the design, and everybody obsesses about the details of the coffee and the food. I mean, that's what our business is, but the big idea was not simply that all the details are fantastic. It's just that the experience was something very different from the type of restaurants that were around in those days. I mean, you've got to remember, London at the time, the early 90s, was not one of the gastronomic capitals of the world. In fact, Jacques Chirac said, next to Finland, London has the worst, Britain has the worst food in Europe. Which actually was rather offensive to the Finns, and we had an incredibly tough
When was that?
This was in the early 1990s, and I don't know if he'd say that now.
That's a great quote, guys.
I don't know if he'd say that now, but you have to remember there was some truth in behind that statement. I think I don't think it was the worst of Europe, apart from Finland. And but remember, I think before the 1990s, in the 70s and 80s, there weren't great restaurants. You know, restaurants were terribly formal, temples for gastronomy. You'd go to Gavroche if you wanted to celebrate something and you had a lot of money. You had steakhouses, but there wasn't a culture of going out,
Sure.
you know, frequently to meet your friends and have dinner. So there just wasn't that. And so when we created something, which was restaurants tended to be, food was thought of as being something you had before you did something else, or after you did something else. So the TV dinner was very popular in the 70s and 80s. So you watched TV and you had your dinner. You wouldn't have dinner, and I mean, it wasn't.
It was not the
enough.
main act.
It wasn't the main act. So you go to the theatre, you go to the cinema, and afterwards or beforehand you'd have dinner.
Changed a lot.
It changed a lot.
So who was next to you back then when you think about this last 15, 20 years, who you admire, who helped you also to create this culture in London? Who of your colleagues, competition, etc., you think were like great companions to change the face of London? Who, because also we did an interview with Clive Schley from Pret a Manger, obviously the other end of the thing, but he also said Pret helped changing London from in terms of habit in eating, etc., obviously in a completely different thing. So whom in your level, what we kind of call affordable luxury or fine dining or whatever you want to call yourself?
Look, I think in those early days, people who really put London on the map in terms of food were, you know, people like Marco Pierre White, before us, Marco Pierre White, Gordon Ramsay, who's still now big in America and still around. And then there were a number of people. And you have to remember also that it wasn't just food. We caught the time. It wasn't just, these guys are producing great food. It was design and theatre. And so at the same time as we were building restaurants, we had the art scene was kicking off. Goldsmiths with Damien Hirst and crowd. Christina Ong was opening up in Bond Street retail. So there was a great cultural renaissance, I think, across not just restaurants, across not just food, but across design, retail, art, and we through the 90s and you know, through the early 2000s, people named it Cool Britannia. As soon as they named it Cool Britannia, it started to get uncool. But there was a period when London was hot, Britain was hot, for a number of reasons. So I think that
still hot.
It's still hot. It's still
hot.
hot. It's still hot. But it became hot having been very cool.
True.
Or not hot in the 70s and 80s.
2006, you made the decision to buy out Conran. Back then, how you felt about that? Because obviously it was already big. It was probably a massive amount of money. Were you scared to do that? What was
We weren't scared. No,
You were sure that this turns good? I mean, it's a brave decision back then. You bought out the guy with the money.
Yes, but but remember the risk. There are two risks you take. One is the risk of the money. Oh my God, have I borrowed too much money? Are the numbers going to work? And the other risk you take is whether or not you can do it, and whether you can actually create the same restaurants, as successful restaurants as the restaurants you created if you changed your business partner. On the first was a risk, We borrowed money, and David and I both put in for us a fair chunk of our personal savings. So that was the risk. But I didn't actually think it was a great risk in terms of our ability to continue to
So you were confident.
create successful restaurants. And the reason for that is, everyone said, oh, D&D, who are these guys? Oh, they're the ex-Conran guys. We were at the heart. I was there when we had one restaurant. So Terence and I and David had worked pretty closely together for a number of years. So we were not going into the unknown in terms of, we were the people who created these restaurants. So
it was the right decision.
It was the right decision. In retrospect, it's gone quite well. So we're happy. We're still doing interesting stuff and enjoying life, and cappuccino is still good.
So fast forward from there to now, you have now 43 restaurants. Is that correct?
44.
44.
Yeah, you need to go and visit our 44.
So where's the latest one?
It's in Fenchurch Street, number 120 Fenchurch Street. It's on the 14th floor. It's called 14 Hills. It's on the 14th floor of the steel and glass building. And when you go up in the lift and you turn left, coming out of the lift, and you go into the restaurant, you're going to get a big surprise.
I'm going to go there.
Because you've got to go there. Maybe I shouldn't tell you what you're going to see.
No, don't tell me. Don't tell them. They need to go there.
They need to go there.
Yeah.
They'll be surprised.
So we give the address, but we don't tell what it is. When I was before with Alex on the tube and we were chatting, and I said to him, what is it for you that makes D&D so special? And he said, it is that nobody knows that this is D&D. If you ask somebody on the street and say how many restaurants you think they're going to have, they will answer 2, 3, because you keep each restaurant so individual with a lot of character, so it appears like the big guys in New York, like Danny Meyer, does very successful, keeping the soul and the heart of each separate, but running central purchasing, running obviously systemization behind. Would you agree to that, or is that the success that you really keep each child, you give an education to each individual child and you raise them and don't try to put the system on everything towards the front?
I think that what we do, the philosophy of the company and what we do every day in our jobs, we build different restaurants concepts. We are not a chain of restaurants.
No.
We never have been. And so it didn't really come out, the idea of having these different restaurants and the idea actually of people not even knowing who D&D is. If you said to people D&D, they say, what's that? Are they fashion brand, or maybe are they plumbers? D&D,
that's great.
What are they? But it's irrelevant. It may be relevant for when we do business deals with landlords, and we actually have some very important corporate clients for whom we do events, and we have a central events team. But in general, for the customer coming here to South Place, guests coming to South Place Hotel or going to our new restaurant, 14 Hills, it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant.
Just a great restaurant.
Our business has always been just building great restaurants, and it didn't come from some great business idea that would be good, that would be a good way of making lots of profit. It came just from the fact that that's what we enjoyed doing. So when we get a site from a landlord, we don't say, oh, let's put a German gymnasium in there, or let's put a sartoria in there. We say, okay, great, here's a lovely space. We have a big table, we lay out the plans, and we talk about what to create. That is what we do. That's what we enjoy doing. I don't actually enjoy the idea of just simply, I wouldn't enjoy a job if my job was to just take one concept and just open 500 of them all over the world. I mean, that's not what turns me on. That's not what turns David on and the other people in our business.
But that's an interesting topic, because last time when we met, first time when we were chatting, you said, and you're also in the board of a fast casual concept, and you said that's also admirable on like how to make money on a completely different level. Yeah. So my question is, if you now say the fast casual guys out there who spread, and the fine dining or affordable luxury guys like you, restaurateurs, what can we learn from each other, or what do you learn from your role of being involved as a board or mentor in fast casual? What can you take from, I say now us because I'm right on that side, for your business?
Well, I learned a lot about about costs and detail from the Franco Manca guys is a fantastic business. The fact that they can make such a great profit, produce a great product, the restaurants are full, and the average spend is £10 a head. I mean, £10 a head for a whole dinner. £10 is what you spend on a starter in most of our restaurants. So it's a different it's a different world for sure. And I've learned that I like it, but that's, I don't think I would like to run that business as my full-time
Would you like to
occupation.
create something like that? I mean, also Danny Meyer created Shake Shack. Would you like to do that, or you say I stick to what I've done and leave this field to the others?
Would we like to, well, it would be great fun to create a $1 billion business because
Because of the $1 billion.
Well, because of $1 billion. Do I really have a wish to create a fast casual business because I want to create a fast casual business? The answer is no. Mm-hmm. Would it be a great idea to use our expertise to see if we can do what Danny Meyer has done and make a ton of money? Well, that sounds like a brilliant idea. So we should probably do that sometime.
Guys, send him the ideas. They are ready for that.
And if we do, we'll come and ask you how to do it.
That's good. 2013, you had another change. We talked about you started together, then you bought it out, then you had a private equity joining. Why have you done that? Did that change anything for you personally, for the business? What was the rationale behind that? You just wanted to leverage down, you wanted to get help. What was the rationale behind doing that?
Well, we had a private equity when we did the original buyout. Mm-hmm. We had a private equity investor who had a very small investment, but Conrad maintain a big investment. So the second, in 2013, what happened was that Conrad sold its stake in our business to another private equity house.
So it had nothing really to do with your decision. It was just...
No, it was really a rearrangement of our shareholders.
But did it change anything in the culture, in the way how you see the future?
No, not really. No.
So when
we've worked with private equity and it hasn't changed. And the private equity people that we work with, LDC, they are a different type of private equity from some private equity guys who think that if only they had the time they could run your business way better than you do. That's not their style, and I don't think we could work with those guys, even if we thought they could, which they wouldn't be able to, I'm sure. But these guys, LDC, and their business model is they like to be passive financial investors and back management teams, and we work.
So you're in full
well.
control.
We're actually in full control, and so that works very well for us.
I want to talk about your about your international learnings. You started with the pure mindset of a London company. You grow outside of London in your own country, and then you take big steps to grow into international cities. If you now look back, because each of us, I think we did last year 15 interviews and all kind of different levels, and everybody talked about the burden of international growth and how much they've been wrong and that they almost lost everything, etc. So you have any horror stories to share with us? Or you
plenty.
say, we went to New York and these guys were waiting for us. Like, how was it for you initially?
So, we went to Paris in our Conrad days, opened in 1998. We went to Paris, and the Parisians saw us as a London British business. And the Parisians probably were a bit like Jacques Chirac, thought the food in Britain was rubbish. And so they thought, well, what are you doing, you Londoners, you Brits, coming to Paris, beautiful city full of the greatest restaurants in the world.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing here? And so we weren't very busy to begin with. However, we persevered, and it was a good restaurant. We tweaked things. After about 2 or 3 years, the Parisians, and we're in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, very nice part of Paris, they noticed that you're still there.
Still around.
Still around.
Stubborn Brits.
And then they forget that you're British. They think you're Parisian, and then you become very successful. So that's what happens in Paris. Now,
So first learning, go there and don't tell them that you're not local, basically.
Best thing is pretend you're not British, and don't put too many British things on the menu because that would be a dead giveaway.
And New York?
And New York was completely different. New York, we went into, it was a crazy site. We spent way too much money. Nobody with any real sense would have taken that site. And we took a site which was, we actually took 60,000 square feet. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
35,000 square feet for a store, a retail store, Conrad shop, and 25,000 square feet for this giant restaurant, Guastavino's. New York's completely different from Paris. You come from abroad, you come from London, they love you. You are mobbed. We did so much revenue. Didn't make any profit, but we made massive, massive revenue.
So where did the money went?
It was a very, very costly to run.
Okay.
It didn't go anywhere into other people's pockets, I hope. Incredibly
You never
costly.
know.
You never know. But then you're hot, 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 and then they move on. So what happens it's a complete reverse of Paris. So in New York, everyone loves you, and it's not that they don't love you anymore. They
start cheating.
They start going to. They all want the hot new thing, and they love newness, and they love things from.
So it's easier to start, but more difficult to maintain.
And more difficult to maintain because it's such a competitive restaurant scene. It's more competitive, I think, than Paris. So you have to work harder. And so what you do in New York is you go in. You shouldn't get seduced by the fact that you're absolutely rammed every night to start with, because that's gonna get probably a little bit less busy, and then your second wave is way more important. You build your long-term business, and that's actually that was back then in Conrad days, and we've had something similar really all these years later with our two most recent restaurants, Bluebird and Queen's Yard. So we've really busy, and then stabilizing, and luckily they're still busy, and we think we've got a couple of decent businesses there. We've still got Guastavino's, which we opened back in 2000, which is a fabulously profitable business, but we evolved that from being it was too big as a restaurant, 26,000 square feet under a bridge, 59th and First, which is really on the fringe of, if not in the center of Midtown, it was a little bit off center. So we turned it, we actually put a lot more money in, that was a courageous move. Having put too much money in to begin with, we put even more to turn it into an event space, and now we do movie premieres, big weddings, and
interesting
charity dinners, and so on. It's super successful.
So looking forward now, how much sales you're doing now here, more or less?
About 150, 160 million a year.
When you now would look forward, do you see yourself rather growing in your home territory, like here, London, or do you now really say, okay, we know what we're doing here, we tried, we had the first learnings in Paris, in New York, and we grow international. Where's the future of DND? You want to become an international player? You want to be a British company with some international sites? Where's the future?
Well, about 3 years ago, just with the, I don't want to talk about Brexit, because it's so boring. Everyone's talking about Brexit forever. No Brexit. However, when we 3 years ago, we did look at our business and thought we were a bit too London focused. It's our home, and every time we know the city very well, and we open new restaurants and they're successful. So why would you not do more and more? And that's been our main plan. But we felt 85-90% of our business revenues were in London. That was become too London focused. So we expanded outside London. We opened in Manchester, a lovely restaurant called 20 Stories, 20th story of this building. There's a pattern here: 14 hills, 20 stories, and we opened a number of restaurants in Leeds just to get the geographical balance in the UK, to be less London reliant. And we did the same. We decided we should do the same. We'd opened in Paris 20 years ago. We've just got one restaurant there. And we just had that one business in New York, again, which we'd opened almost 20 years ago. So we decided we needed to be more international, just really to make the business more stable, just in case the UK became X growth or lower growth than it has been. And so we went to New York, and our two biggest projects the last year have been in New York. And I think that will be what I think for sure, we've just announced 2 projects over here in the UK, which are quite large projects, one in Stratford and one in a rooftop restaurant in Birmingham. But I do think that we're likely to do more relatively compared to how we have been in the last 10 years. We'll do proportionally more projects in overseas. I think principally the US, because we're just absolutely inundated with probably people who've been to Queen's Yard and Bluebird and say, look, we think you guys have got an opportunity to open more in New York, but also in other US cities. But I'm hoping that we will be able to do more in Europe too.
Great. What about opening within premium shopping centers? Like how you see that, because you created hotels, you created street location, you go to very unusual location like on higher floor of 14 Hills and 22nd stories or 21st stories. What was it?
20 stories.
20 stories. So how you see shopping centers? You see yourself running within a proper Westfield property restaurants? Or how you see that? Or you say that's not for us? How you see that?
No, not at all. We have actually got, people don't think about it. We've opened the 2 New York restaurants are in shopping centres. They're very upscale shopping centres, but they're shopping centres. And those 2 are in the heart of the shopping centres. We've also, we've built restaurants adjacent to shopping centres. We have a very successful, it's more a bar than a restaurant, but at the top of One New Change, which is a Land Security Zone shopping centres. So we're very comfortable, provided we can create a great environment and which doesn't feel as if it's just a service to the shopping centre, provided we can create a proper destination restaurant which attracts people from outside the shopping centre. We're very happy to go to those properties. The shopping centres have to change and are changing. I mean, I don't need to tell you this. The world is changing. People are not going out to shops and buying clothes and furniture in the same numbers that they were.
They need experience.
They are
need
going out to
restaurants.
eat.
Sure.
They are going out to watch movies. They are going out to do yoga. So people are changing, and products are being bought online, and so the people who own shopping centres, who own existing shopping centres, also people who are planning new ones, do have to think differently about.
I think it's a little bit like you said before, when you said food was not the main attraction, it was the cinema, and food was like an add-on. I think now it's like with the shopping, people don't go to this destination to shop, they go to have an experience, to have a movie, to have a great restaurant, and on the way there, they shop or take something home. So I think we see a similar
I think you've
twist.
got to get rid of this phrase shopping centres.
100%.
Because they're not shopping centres anymore.
I want to talk about mega trends, because in our industry, and correct me if you see it differently, but in our industry in general, I think we see the trend to eat home and to get deliveries. We see the trend that people really care about sustainability, and even the big guys in the fast food world, our friends, need to think about plastic, straws, etc. And we talk about plant-based. So if you now take these 3 big chunks to say delivery, what is not sure how it applies to you, sustainability and plant-based, what do you really see also as a disrupting factor for your restaurants, and how you deal with them?
Well, firstly, delivery. No insignificant impact on our sector, our part of eating out. We have actually tried delivery, and somehow people just don't think that it's the same thing having Pont Le Tour deliver your dinner rather than you going to Pont Le Tour, because you're going there for the total experience. It's not just for the food. So a massive impact on casual dining, very little impact so far on the top end, and I don't think it will. Certainly for people like us, our restaurants are not just about just putting some food on a plate. There's a lot more to that. So I don't think it will have in the foreseeable future a big impact. Now, sustainability is interesting. A few years ago, we won an award for being the most sustainable top-end restaurant group in the UK.
Great.
But we had an audit, actually, of how good we are now. And what, compared to we were good then, I don't think we're probably better than most other restaurant groups. I don't think, given where public opinion is and given where the world has moved, we are good enough. And we're having we had a big meeting with our directors earlier this week, and we were talking about each area of our business where we could be better. With plastic straws, great, we got rid of plastic straws. We were all over the papers. We were one of the first top-end dining companies to do that. But what about all the plastics that are used in the kitchens? So I think I've always felt that with aspects of sustainability, such as not creating food waste, we're pretty good. Restaurants are good, because a good chef shouldn't waste anything. No. I mean, what gets wasted is if I serve you a steak and you don't eat it.
Yeah, that's you leave. Wasted.
We've actually tried to introduce doggy bags here. People are not really that interested where they are in America. So that's waste, and we manage that in a way. But in terms of creating waste ourselves, as opposed to our customers, we really shouldn't. Great. Because you put specials, definitely. You have staff food, and anybody who is a chef who produces a lot of waste is just not a good chef. So from that point of view, we're good. Sustainability in terms of making sure we get our meat and fish, it's a constant challenge. I think we're pretty good. There's a good awareness, but which fish is sustainable, which fish is not, is changing all the time. You have to have a balance between what the customers want. Yes, the customers want sustainability, but they also want to have a delicious piece of fish. At
a certain price point too.
If we served pollock to them the whole time because it was sustainable and charged them 30 quid, because the cost of pollock was going up, we wouldn't do that. It's not £30, but I think our restaurants will be empty. So you have to constantly get this balance.
It's a dialogue,
and you have to have this dialogue, and you have to try and be ahead, because we want to be, as Pete, all companies, especially companies like us, we're not a public company, we have a private equity investor, but we're really a company that we ourselves, the managers and the directors and staff, we run. And so really the company should be run in a way that reflects the views of the people, of the owners and the staff. Sure. And the owners and the staff do feel strongly about sustainability, and so we do, in everything that we do, in the context of trying to be successful, not actually go out of business, we do with everything try and say, well, look, can we be more sustainable? And things like energy consumption, there's very little, apart from maybe getting the relationship with the customer and ourselves right, there's very little in terms of how you run your business where there is a conflict of interest between sustainability and making a profit. So if you turn the lights off and you use less energy, it's lower cost and you make more profit. So why would you not do that? So we're heavily into looking at technology to reduce consumption of electricity and just housekeeping, just managing in the way I'm sure at home you turn your lights off. We try to turn our lights.
My wife is all the time behind me and said, "Turn the light off."
No, I do. They need to be used.
I do. And what about plant-based? What is the biggest buzzword at the moment? How you reflect that? Is it that important? Is it just like a lot of talking at the end? People don't eat it. Do you put it?
It is important.
Yeah. How important?
I think most customers, a lot of customers, want to see vegan dishes on the menu.
Will they order?
But when you actually look at what people order, there is a trend towards it, but it's nothing. Far more people want to see them on the menu than actually order those dishes. So if you look at the easiest way of looking at how much of the popularity of vegan dishes is just looking at your purchases. So we look at our purchases. I look at the vegetables that we've bought, and there's vegetarian and vegan. And yes, there's an increase, but it's not significant. People are still eating meat and still eating a lot of non. And again, there's a balance, because if you go too far, customers must feel that you are recognizing.
You hear them.
What they want. If you go over the line and they feel that you're preaching to them, and let's say we produced a menu which was 80% vegan dishes. Customers don't like that. So come on, I can make up my own mind as to. But if you have only 2 vegan dishes, they say, well, you haven't got. I'm not a vegan, but you haven't got enough vegan dishes. Or I'm going to have. I feel like having. I want to be vegan this week, and you've only given me 2 dishes. So we say, really, as a rough rule of thumb, 15 to 20. Well, 20% is what we say vegan dishes on.
Great.
On all
I
our
think
menus.
that my point of view is the same, and I do now, as the audience know, because I talk a lot about it, I do a test. I do 6 months vegan. I'm already 6 months vegetarian before. And it's really more about learning a foreign language. I really not cheat at all. I'm very strict. I travel a lot. I go to a restaurant, I stumble in and say, what are you going to do now with me? And I'm not going to vegan restaurants. And at the end of the day, it is exactly needed what you say. When I go there, I don't need to have 30 choices. I don't feel comfortable in having one choice, because what if I don't like mushrooms and I'm stuck with a mushroom risotto? I think this, what you describe now, that you have a proper selection for the vegan community or for the flexitarians who wants to eat vegan on that day or week, I think that's probably the answer. And also have the vibe of a group to say that a group can go in and the meat lover finds something.
That's the key point, because it's not, we haven't got 90% of our, it's a very small, there may be a small volume of vegan dishes that are ordered, but if you think about a group of people, if you have, say, 8 people go for dinner and there's one vegan, and that vegan isn't properly catered for, then you may lose that dinner.
The whole group?
The whole group.
Sure.
So that's all, I mean, that was always the case actually with, I remember at the, we had, when we first opened our restaurants, we had a chop house, Butlersdorf Chop House, and there was a friend of mine, and she said to me, I keep taking people to the chop house, and you haven't got good enough vegetarian dishes. I said to her, but it's not it's a chop house. You wouldn't expect vegetarian. She said, the thing is that I take groups of people, and I like my meat, but I've always got a vegetarian there, and I feel awkward about going to your restaurant if you haven't got. So we've
100%.
always been fairly good as for vegetarians and on having a decent selection of menu items, and we've just moved on now.
I think that's
to
the
vegan.
way. Last segment of the talk, looking back now on your career, and obviously you have great success and people admire what you do within the industry, but also the customer who don't even know, the clients, the guests, what is behind. How much of that was hard work and how much was luck, if you're honest? How you rate yourself on that scala?
I think in the initial days of when you launch a business or you're developing a business, luck, it's great to have a bit of luck. But when you have developed a business, you're growing a business, honestly, it isn't luck. If you're playing the casino and hoping for your number to come up, you're not going to be in business. So there's nothing that's certain in life. But when we open new restaurants, or we sometimes set up other businesses which are related to restaurants, and there you're taking a little bit more of a risk. But it's you really from your experience and from the skills that are around the table, you're going to take that luck. You take that uncertainty. That uncertainty compared to when you first start up in business is very low. And you can see that in we've got all these restaurants. We haven't had many, or we've never, we've hardly ever closed. We've closed one restaurant because of political reasons, and but in terms of just purely poor trading, we have. I mean, we don't close restaurants. They're touch wood, they're open, and if they don't, and the thing about restaurants is it's not. And some people think what restaurants are all about. You get a good chef, you get a good designer, you get your good property deal, you open it, you get your PR right, yeah, and you're busy, great, fantastic, and then you go back home and you wait for the dividends to come in. It's not like that, and there's, as you probably know, so that the tough side of it is not like that. So you have to work hard.
Very hard.
But the positive side of it is that if you open, and you know what, it's not as successful as you think. It's not game over completely. We weren't. there are some restaurants where we opened them initially, Butler's Wharf Chop House. We lost money for a couple of years. And I used to go there. Pont Le Tour was absolutely packed. Chop House bar was completely empty. But you know what? 2 years later, we came up with some ideas and things, and it got a bit busier. So the skill of a restaurateur is not just to open successful restaurants, but it has to develop success in the long term.
And consistency.
And that's not luck.
No.
That's
Good answer.
That's about skill and experience.
What dream is left for you to be fulfilled? So if you now on the business side say, okay, I have great restaurants, I'm really proud of that. I've done Paris, I've done New York. What is like a dream side where you say, this is like, I need to open there? And is there anything where you say, this is my dream?
I think some of and I've worked with some great people who've been world class, and I come across other people who are, fantastically talented and built. And I'm not certain that those guys step out with a very big dream or are sitting there, oh my God, I've got to go and I've got to make it big in California and I've got to be in China. I just think some of these guys, and I think I'm not, I don't consider myself a great entrepreneur. I'm do what I do, but I think they just love doing what they do, and I'm sitting here thinking, I just love the next project. That sounds a little, let me be a bit more direct about it. I do want us to be successful in America. It's not a dream. It's not, we've opened a couple of restaurants. We've got 3 successful businesses there, but it's small. I see a big opportunity. I think the States are very different. California is different from New York, and New York, the Midwest is very different. But I think we can be bigger and successful in America. So that's, if you like, a dream. However,
it's more mission.
I'm actually really interested in, I got very excited by the next project that we're doing in Stratford. And people say, Stratford, what are you doing in Stratford? And it's an incredible building. It was in the Evening Standard. I'm not sure the property owners like this description, but they said that we were going to open this flying saucer building in Stratford. And I think, oh my God, that's a beautiful building. And that gives me as much excitement as going off and somebody saying, oh, look, go and open in Miami. I'm more interested in, I think, the project than I am just geographically. I'm certainly not interested in world domination or anything like that. Just want to do great projects, have fun with a nice group of people that we've been working together for a while, and be able to, have a nice holiday.
Thank you so much. We always get, and I almost forgot, it's good that I looked back, because always when we do the interviews, then the comments are online. It's like, these guys are foodies, you need to ask them more questions about favorite restaurant, etc. So I do that. Favorite restaurant outside of your own in London? I need to ask it, if not they get the comments. And you need to answer, if not you're on the shit list afterwards from the viewers.
This is such a ridiculous question to ask a restaurateur. Shall I tell you why?
Tell me.
Because the nature of what we do, I eat out 250 times a year, okay?
But where will you go a second time, a third time? Where take your family? What's the...
Where we go, okay, tends to be, because there are so many new restaurants opening, we go to all the hot new restaurants. Can't even go to them all, there's too many.
But where go the second time?
There are lots of restaurants I've been to a second time. I like, in Shoreditch, Isaac McHale's, Clove Club, and Luca, which is because we live in Clerkenwell. I've been there a couple of times. Look, I went to Jay Sheeky's the other day, not having been there for a long time, and actually somebody else booked it. And we had dinner. I thought, God, before we went to the theatre, I haven't been to Sheeky's for such a long time. And you know what? It's as good. The food's as good as I remember. But I wouldn't. Look, I mean, there are lots of people I admire in the restaurant business, but I'm always really interested in what's going on at the hot new restaurant. I don't get a chance really to go and. Because we've also got to go to our own restaurants. I spend all my time going off to my favourite.
Somebody needs to do it.
I have constantly people saying, "Why have you not been? You have not been here for." If I was then a regular at Caprice and not going to Pont Le Tour, only going to Pont Le Tour once a year, people just think I'm what are you doing, Des? So that's why I think for a restaurateur it's a difficult question.
And if it needs to be fast food once in a while, where you stumble in?
Fast food, I don't know if you call it fast food, but I tell you, I like the sushi at Wasabi. And my go-to lunch, actually, if I'm at my desk, I'm never in my office, but occasionally when I'm in my office, I'll say, get some sushi. I enjoy Japanese food, but fast food, Japanese fast food. So what else? I've had the burgers at Shake Shack.
And?
I thought they were so delicious. And I thought the shakes were so delicious. But I can't be going. I mean, I've just been to the gym. If I said to Rui, my trainer, that I'd be going to Shake Shack a couple of times a week.
You will be tough.
So I thought, look, I think Shake Shack is a great business because it just produces delicious burgers. I think Franca Manca is a great business because you have a pizza at great value, it's great fun, and I go to Franca Manca's every now and then, but again, because I'm involved.
Great.
I do like restaurants. There are quite a lot of restaurants.
Do you cook at home?
My wife's a brilliant cook. I'm a brilliant cook if I ever did cook.
So no cooking?
I don't really cook very much. My wife always says, the thing about you is that when you do cook, you always love the food that you cook. Maybe other people don't, but you always do.
That's true.
Maybe it's the same with you.
So, last meal before you die.
Why do people ask questions like that?
So what is it? What's the last food before you die?
Oh my God, that is such a ridiculous question. What is but okay, let me try and answer it. Don't think like that. But what do I enjoy fish. I enjoy fish and meat. I used to eat more meat than I do now. But in terms of meat, I enjoy lamb, a lovely piece of roast lamb. In terms of fish, my favorite fish, and it has to be on the bone, it can't be filleted, is the sea bream. So I would probably, my last meal, I would probably have a simple sea bream, beautifully fresh, with a piece of lemon and some hollandaise, and a glass of white burgundy, and I'd be happy.
Thank you so much.
With a decent espresso to finish.
And the cappuccino the morning after, if you're not dying.
Cappuccino the next morning, if I'm still alive.
So if you're still alive, it will be the cappuccino next morning. Thank you so much for being so open. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it will be great also for the audience.
Good.
Thank you. And I know now where to go. A lot of tips, and we will all put them in there.
Number 120 Fenchurch Street, 14 Hills, on the 14th floor. This is
next weekend when I'm there.
And somebody asked me, why Hills?
So why?
If you look, you can see even from the 14th floor beyond the city to Hills. Somebody said, "Are there 14?" Don't be so pedantic.
Nobody knows. That's the
Nobody
story.
knows.
That's the
Nobody
knows.
There are 14 hills, and I'm sticking to that.
Thank you so much.
Luckily, it's the same number of floors.
It's a great name. It sticks. So, guys, 14 Hills. Ciao.
Stay tuned on www.teddytalkswith.com.